We are a church here that are here to help people find and follow Jesus. In a lot of ways, we do that right now. We're going through the New Testament together and reading as a family, going through the New Testament. And I appreciate everybody's conversations and things that you're learning. That really is inspiring to me to continue to stick with it and to dig. And I appreciate everybody doing that together as a family. Today, we are going to talk about our need to see. And if you are a grammar teacher, you will see I spelt it wrong. It was on purpose. You'll find out why in just a minute. But school of thought. Back in Jesus' day, there was two schools of thought. If you remember a week or two ago, I was talking about the yoke. And rabbis had a certain yoke. It was the way they interpreted the scriptures, and that was what they taught their disciples. And their disciples were going to go out and teach that yoke, that interpretation to others. And there was two schools of thought back in Jesus' day. These rabbis had passed away by the time Jesus came in on the scene, but their schools of thought were very much there. And you will see this as we read about Jesus, where the Pharisees are trying to trap him on many things. But one was Hillel and one was Shammai. And Hillel and Shammai had different views. One you could say was more conservative. The other was a little bit more liberal in his thinking. So these rabbis interpreted the scriptures through their yoke, and they were trying to teach others about this. But this caused vigorous debates. It caused tension. It caused things with regards to ritual practices and things like that, which was something that was tense during these days. The theology and the way you interpreted scriptures, these people were a little different. Let me just give you a little bit of an idea. So in regards to who could study the Torah, well, if you asked Shammai, he believed that only worthy students should be admitted to study Torah. Remember, we went through the schools that a Jewish boy would go to, and man, if you didn't get through memorizing the whole Old Testament, you're pretty much, you're not worthy to study the whole Torah. That's what Shammai believed. But Hillel believed Torah may be taught to anyone in the expectation that they would repent and become worthy. Let's take white lies for a moment. This was one of the debates back then. Can you tell a white lie as to whether you should say to your bride on her wedding day that she was beautiful or not? And Shammai said it was wrong to lie. But I like Hillel's version here. He said all brides are beautiful on their wedding day. That's a smart one to keep and remember. When it came to divorce, there was a tension. They came to find from Jesus, okay, what's your teaching on this, Jesus? Because Hillel says one thing and Shammai says another. Shammai held that a man may only divorce his wife for serious transgressions. But if you went and saw Hillel, he was so liberal that, you know what? You could divorce your wife even for burning a meal. So there was a lot of tension there. There is a story that we're involving an incident where a Gentile who came before Shammai, he requested this. He said, "Convert me to Judaism on condition that you can teach me the entire Torah while I stand on one foot." Shammai pushed the man away with a rod he was holding. Undeterred, the man went to Hillel, and this is what Hillel says with the same request. Hillel said to him, "That which is hateful unto you, do not do unto your neighbor." This is the whole Torah. All the rest is commentary. Now go and study. So you can see this tension amongst these two schools of thought. But why is this important? I wanted to start this because you're going to see this all through as these Pharisees are coming to Jesus to try to trick him. It's because there was two major schools of thought in Jesus' day. Jesus, is he going to uphold the Sabbath? Or is he going to uphold love your neighbor? This is going to be really interesting as we see this, as we need to see in this message. We're going to look at a miracle of Jesus. But I don't want you to miss everything that's happening all around this miracle. Jesus is going to do something unexpected. And so what Jesus is about to do is to help us see God more clearly. Everything Jesus does helps us see God more clearly and through the right lenses. Actually, Jesus even says this about himself. He says, the one who looks at me, this is in John chapter 12, 45, the one who looks at me is seeing the one who sent me. Just let that sit for a moment. The one who looks at me is seeing the one who sent me. Now, there is a danger when we fall in love with our traditions. There's a danger when we fall in love with the way we worship and the way we sing songs, the songs we sing, the way we sing them, the prayers we pray, the times we meet, where we meet, who we associate with, and the things we become known for. For a lot of times, we become known for the things we don't do, as opposed to the things that we do. And when these take precedence over overlooking Jesus, and we miss Jesus, we become like a Pharisee. So this is the tension that we're going to find ourselves in as Jesus is about to do an amazing miracle. So today I want you to look at this miracle that we're going to look at, this interaction between Jesus and his disciples. We're not going to get to the Pharisee part this week. We're going to look at that next week because they didn't even get to see this man being healed. They only saw the result of the healing, and it caused a lot of tension. We'll look at that next week. But here's a little background. Jesus had just made a claim that was about to cost him his life. He made this claim, I tell you the truth, before Abraham was even born, I am. At that point, they picked up stones to throw at him, but Jesus was hidden from them and left the temple. Keep this in mind. Why was this so offensive? Jesus says, before Abraham was born, I am. Now let's just go back to our Old Testament for a moment, and there was a time when Moses was before the burning bush, and he was going to go and lead the people from slavery, and he had to go to Pharaoh. This is what God is inviting him into. And he's got all these excuses, but he says, okay, but who should I say sent me? And he says, the I am sent you. So when Jesus says this about himself, that he was even born before Abraham, he is equating himself to God, and it's about to get him stoned to death. So Jesus right now is on the temple grounds, and this is really important. Jesus is on the temple grounds. This is blasphemy to the Pharisees, and they want to kill him because he just equated himself to God. And so Jesus slips away from the temple. But I want to zoom out just a little bit further for a moment and have a closer look, because what is going on right now is the Feast of Tabernacles. Now, if you read through the Old Testament, you probably read through these things and think, I have no idea what they're talking about. That's how I kind of looked at this before until you dig into it a little bit more. It's called the Feast of Tabernacles, or the Feast of Booths. And this was a festival that happened every year. And they're on the 7-day feast that's happening right now. And Jesus is teaching in the temple as this is going on for 7 days. What it would do is they would actually go to Jerusalem, live in tents like they used to in the desert, as the tabernacle was the tent, and they had God residing in there, and they'd all tent around. And so it was a reminder of how God provided for them, took care of their needs in the desert. And so this is what's being celebrated at this time. And there was a ritual that would happen. And this ritual included the priest taking holy water from the pool of Siloam. They would march down to the pool of Siloam as a festival, one day, each day for that 7 days, until the last day. They would do it 7 times. And they would march down together. They would grab a pitcher of water from this. The reason why it was called holy water or living water is because it was spring-fed. Any water that was spring-fed was equated to being holy water or living water. And so they'd come down, and this was actually just discovered within the last 10, 15 years, where they excavated this and discovered this. They would take a pitcher, get it, and bring it back to the temple, all singing praises to God. And they would pour this water on an altar, where a part in the temple where the women and the men could meet. Because there were certain portions of the temple where the women were not allowed. And if you had any kind of abnormality or anything like that, you were not allowed in the temple. And so they would congregate and they would pour water pour this living water on this altar, and another priest would take new wine and he would pour it on the altar as well. And they would celebrate and sing praises to God for his provision, that they could actually get water from a rock. And they're remembering this, the living water, the rock, and how God provided. Jesus is in the temple at this time, during the 7-day festival, teaching what the symbol actually means. He is there. The symbol is all about him. He's right in the middle of it. And on John 7, verses 37, it says, on the last day, the climax of the festival, Jesus stood and shouted to the crowd. This is incredible. Anyone who is thirsty may come to me. Anyone who believes in me may come and drink. Get this. They are going back and forth with this living water, pouring it on an altar and celebrating. And Jesus is saying, anyone who is thirsty may come to me. Anyone who believes in me may come and drink. For the scriptures declare rivers of living water will flow from his heart. And when he said living water, he was speaking of the Spirit who would be given to everyone believing in him. But the Spirit had not yet been given because he had not yet entered into his glory. Well, you can imagine this caused an uproar. What is he talking about? He is the living water. It divided people. Some were amazed. Some wanted him arrested. So everything during this festival is about Jesus, who is right there amongst them, and they do not see him. They are blind. He's the rock, he's the living water, he's the provider, and it's driving the Pharisees nuts. Jesus is threatening their whole system. The whole celebration is about Jesus. All the traditions is about Jesus coming, and they miss him. So they have him chased out of the temple. And this is where we pick up the story in John chapter 9. Jesus is now kicked out of the temple. Somehow he slips away. And here we have a discussion that happens. Jesus walks out of the temple and he comes to someone who is blind. As Jesus was walking along, he saw a man who had been blind from birth. Now, Jesus sees this man, and the disciples start wondering, Rabbi, his disciples asked him, why was this man born blind? Was it because of his own sins or his parents' sins? I don't want us to miss this for a moment. How come it is that here Jesus brings them to a person that is blind, someone who needs help, someone who is never welcome in this festival, to go into the temple to celebrate what they're celebrating? And the first question they ask, who sinned? Was it him or his mom or his dad? But I love this about Jesus, and if you don't get anything else from this message, get this. Jesus seeks out people where religion won't go. Jesus seeks out people where religion won't go. Jesus is always looking for those on the margins. He's looking for those who have been pushed aside, the abandoned, the outsider. And when you read through the Gospel of Matthew, he is writing from this perspective. It's why you have 4 women that should have never been in the lineage of Jesus are in there, because Matthew understands it's about the outsider. And you know what Matthew was? He was a tax collector, and he was an outsider as well. And he's writing this to highlight these events. And Jesus comes to this blind man, and the conversation from his disciples is, who sinned? So, why are they asking this question? Here's a perfect opportunity to help somebody, but the debate turns into a theological debate of who sinned. They may have even been within earshot. I understand that when you are missing something like your eyesight, you have really heightened hearing. Maybe they heard the disciples asking, oh, here we go again. It always comes down to this. I didn't sin. I was born this way. I am blind. But I'm going to ask us a question. What about us? Do we ask those same questions? We want to know why bad things happen to people. Why do bad things happen to us and also to people? Is it because we're paying a price for maybe a sin, paying a price for something we've done in our past? And Jesus is demonstrating how to use this opportunity to do something about it. But we always want to look back and we question, oh, I know why they're on the street. They must have sinned pretty bad. They've made some really bad decisions. And you know what? They're not really worth our time. And Jesus wants to take this opportunity to look forward and to help this man who's been born blind. Their worldview is that God wouldn't let someone be born unless it was some form of punishment. That's what they're thinking. Do you know what worldview this fits in with? Karma. When you think of karma, think about it. It's justice right away. Have you been driving down the street and you see someone that cut you off and pulled in front of you, and then they get into an accident ahead and you're like, ha ha, karma. We want justice right away. If something bad happens, it means they deserve it, right? God wouldn't allow bad things to happen to good people just because. Well, karma looks good for those who love justice here and now. We all want justice in our own terms, and karma can offer that. But the thought that whoever is suffering because they deserve it, will we ever help anybody? And if it doesn't make sense that they are suffering, it must be because sometimes they did it in a past life, which is reincarnation that fits with karma. Oh, they must have been really evil in their past life if they're suffering this way. But the alternative worldview that Jesus is offering us is that sometimes bad things happen to good people. Sometimes we discover that this world is not always just. We live in an unfair world with many trials. And the most compassionate response that we can have is not to sit there and judge whether they deserve to be helped or not. It's to help them. And Jesus is going to show us that. So with this mindset, the question is not, I wonder who sinned. The question is, how can I help this person in their suffering? That's compassion. And compassion takes relationship. It takes us getting close to the person. So watch how Jesus responds. Jesus says it was not because of his sins or his parents' sins. Jesus answered, this happened so that the power of God could be seen in him. We must quickly carry out the tasks assigned us by the one who sent us. Interesting. Do you see what Jesus is doing here? He's not entering a debate of whether who sinned and whether he deserves to be born blind or not. He is saying that if we are going to be like Jesus and like the rabbi that these disciples were following, then we're going to get to work and we're going to help those who need it. Jesus finishes this off. The night is coming, and then no one can work. But while I am here in the world, I am the light of the world. Is that not the mission that we've been invited into? Is to help those on the outside, to help those who are suffering. It's an opportunity to do the work of God. And Jesus uses the term we. I don't know if you caught that. We must quickly carry out the task assigned. Not just here while I'm here on this earth, Jesus is saying, I got to do all this work and heal as many people as I can. No. We together, we're going to take care of the needs of those who are suffering. Now, we may not be able to heal blindness. I can't do that. I wish I had that gift. And if you have that gift, get busy. Because there's a lot of blind people that need to see. But I may not be able to bring healing that way. But I can bring healing through love and compassion to those who are suffering. And this is the invitation Jesus is inviting us into, to bring light to the world. Don't plan compassion for the future. Do it now while it is still day. And that's the point that Jesus is making. But don't we do this all the time? I can't think of how many people I've walked by, and you can't help everybody. Jesus has never healed everybody. But let me ask you, do we sometimes not help somebody because it's a waste of our time? Or it's going to inconvenience us? I was amazed after thinking about this. I've never thought about this before, but Jesus would heal a leper. Do you know that it would take Jesus out of being ritually clean for 6 days The fact that he would go and heal a leper and touch the leper meant that he would be unclean for 6 days. But Jesus seemed to be okay with that. I think sometimes what happens is we don't help people, at least I don't, because it's an inconvenience. And I am being challenged by this as we go through this together. So what does Jesus do? He does this. The disciples are getting ready. Jesus has got to be up to something. So Jesus comes to this blind man, and he gets near some dirt that's beside him, and he goes, and he picks up the spit, the loogie, whatever you want to call it. And you know what he starts to do? He starts to knead it. For those of you who are bakers, you would know that's to mix it. Why is he mixing? What is this all about? This guy's blind. Jesus never heals a blind man in the same way. Why? It means that what Jesus does, he's trying to teach his disciples a message or a lesson, and there's a purpose for it. So let's look for what that purpose is. There wasn't a formula for miracles. There wasn't a book of spells or anything like that you say, oh, if you just do this. No. Jesus is mixing mud, kneads it, puts it on his eyes, and then he says, go and wash in that pool of Siloam. The one where they're going 7 times that day to get water, the holy water, and bring it back to the temple to celebrate. But not only was this the last day of the festival, and they're going to be traveling this road 7 times, it was also the Sabbath. And the blind man is going to go right into the middle of religion, right into the middle of tradition, and he's going to go and wash this mud off in their holy water. See, I don't think Jesus is ignoring religion. I think he's bringing attention to the blindness of religion. And this is a challenge for me and a challenge for all of us. Jesus is saying, if you are going to follow me, you can't add me to your religious festivals, your religious traditions. No. I am not what your religious traditions, I am what your religious traditions are all about, and you are blind. That's what he's calling us to. So why did Jesus do this? Because Jesus could have said, be healed. Go about your way. No. We find out this is the Sabbath, and so Jesus turned the Sabbath into something that they were trying to uphold and get all the rules right on the Sabbath. Time after time, you're going to read about Jesus being caught on, you can't do that on the Sabbath. But Jesus is always helping his neighbor. He's loving his neighbor by showing compassion. And Jesus is bringing to light that he chooses to heal this man in this way for a reason. They had 39 different rules that you couldn't do on the Sabbath. It was in the Mishnah. It was their oral law. It was the 613 laws that they had. They had all these other laws on top of these laws to make sure they didn't make a mistake on the Sabbath. Because you couldn't work on the Sabbath. It was a day of rest. So, 39 categories of work, all had different rules. Did you know that these are 3 of the rules that Jesus broke? Medical treatment, healing ointment, and no kneading. No stirring it up. And yet Jesus loves to stir things up. Medical treatment. It may be applied, this is their rule. It may be applied only to life-threatening injuries, such as bleeding injury. Got to take care of that right away. But a toothache, that can wait till tomorrow. Jesus is like, can it wait till tomorrow? Yeah. But I'm here. And he's blind. Let's do something. Against applying healing ointments. This is a strange law, but this is one of their laws. You could not put healing ointments on their eyes. It would be like for dry eyes or viruses or anything like that. You couldn't do that on the Sabbath. Well, Jesus mixes some mud and throws it on their eyes. And then no kneading. Dough or clay. Do you know why? Do you know why they couldn't mix on the Sabbath? It's because when they were in slavery, they were mixing clay with straw to make bricks. And the Sabbath was a reminder that you're not brick makers. So don't be mixing things on the Sabbath. So you could do this. You could mix your cereal, your porridge at night, and pour water on it the next day and eat it. But do not mix it, because that is against the Sabbath law. But it's because this would be so close to when they made bricks, they said no mixing. But Jesus is saying, and this is our message for us, don't let religion blind you to the needs around you. Don't let religion blind you to the needs around you. So Jesus spits into the mud, mixes it and kneads it, puts it on the man's eyes, breaks 3 Sabbath laws. Then he says, go and wash in the pool of Siloam, where the living water is, where they are going to gather water for their festival. Jesus is not ignoring the law. He's not abolishing it. He's actually fulfilling it. And he's living it out to perfection. Let me say this. Helping someone in need trumps the Sabbath every time. Helping someone in need trumps the Sabbath every time. So where does this leave us today? These are challenging questions I just want to leave you with. They're going to land wherever they land. This has been filtered through me first, and I'm challenged by these. But are there religious traditions that have trumped you and I from actually helping people? Let me ask it this way. Are there worship traditions that have actually gotten in the way of you and I helping people? Are there religious traditions that have pushed people to the fringes and to the margins to a point where we say, well, you're not welcome here? Are there religious traditions that blind us to the needs before us? And this is the most challenging question, is would Jesus be welcome in our fellowship? I just want this to be something that we wrestle with. We are never going to get this perfect. Yet we must become a church where both sinners and saints are welcome, because that looks like Jesus. And if Jesus says, when you see me, you see God, that's the heart of God. It's our love and compassion that's going to bring us together and bring people to Jesus. We're going to sing a song as we get ready for communion. If you haven't already had a chance to go and get your communion, you can do that now.